The topics and opinions expressed on the following show are solely those of the hosts and their guests and not those of W4WN Radio, its employees, or affiliates. We make no recommendations or endorsements for radio show programs, services, or products mentioned on air or on our web. No liability, explicit or implied, shall be extended to W4WN Radio, its employees, or affiliates. Any questions or comments should be directed to those show hosts. Thank you for choosing W4WN Radio.
Books, beauty products, science, fashion, and glam talk. From Bollywood to Hollywood, it's Dr.Afshan Hashmi's radio show every Wednesday at 6 p.m. Eastern Time, right here on W4WN Radio, the Women for Women Network. And here's your host, international speaker, educator, award-winning entrepreneur, and best-selling author, Dr. Afshan Hashmi.
Hello everyone, this is Dr. Afshan Hashmi live from Florida studio of W4WN Radio and Talk 4 TV, and this show is syndicated worldwide to 300 million listeners. So if you give me sponsorship, just think how your product will be promoted in such a big way. If you give me sponsorship, you can write to me at afshan@drafshanhashmi.com and I will give you a very reasonable price. And I wanted to remind you that these are my two books, and please go and buy these two books and give me an honest review, friends. And this show, as I told you, is syndicated worldwide to 300 million listeners. So if you give me sponsorship, your product will be promoted in a very great way. And now I will ask Jason, my sound engineer, to please play the sponsorship film. Hello everyone, this is Dr. Afshan Hashmi live from a barn in Virginia, and I just wanted to say for my W4WN Radio and Talk 4 TV, I request everyone who is listening to please give sponsorships if you want these shows to continue, because this show is syndicated worldwide to more than 300 million listeners. So if you give me sponsorship, your product will be promoted to more than 300 million listeners around the globe. And I wanted to tell you that to make these kind of shows, it requires a lot of money and energy. So I just want to request a sponsorship, and cheers and bye bye. And today, friends, I will be talking about a book, The Director, My Ear's Assistant, Edgar Hoover, by Paul Letersky and with Gordon Dillow. And here is the cover of the book. So this is the cover of this book, and it's a very interesting book. While browsing through Barnes and Noble, I saw this book and I read it and I really liked it, and now I will read about the author, and then I will go on a break, and after that I will be talking about this book. So let me go on a break and I will be back.
Would you love exposure for your business, product, or service to over 300 million potential listeners? Send an email to info@talk4media.com. And now let's hear from some of our sponsors.
Chapter 2: How Jugaad Leads to Multi-Sector Success Stories in India, including definitions of the Jugaad Management Principle business model. Of the book, The Modern Mughal Mentality, New Strategies to Succeed in India and the Global Marketplace. Inspiration. True Jugaad is an inspiration on how to create products using technology that meet the price-value equation. According to a Harvard Business Review article featuring expert Prahlad and Olshaker, most innovation programs are built on the assumptions of affluence and abundance. We see the rich and the young in both the developed and the developing countries demanding environmental friendly products and services. They also believe that affordability and sustainability are crucial to driving successful business today. New technologies and radical business models are important not only to penetrate mass markets in India but in the entire world. By reconfiguring all areas of the business structure, they will full.
A monstrous infection is spreading worldwide. OMG, is this a simple infection or a deliberate attempt to ruin the human population? Or maybe it's bioterrorism. What is this global infection and who is spreading it? Help us find out. Go to Amazon and search for The Outbreak of a Monstrous Infection. The human race needs your help to make this go viral. Go to Amazon.com and read The Outbreak of a Monstrous Infection to find out what happens next. Go now! The world is depending on you.
And now, back to Dr. Afshan Hashmi's radio show.
So, friends, the book I am going to review is this: The Director, My Ears Assisting J. Edgar Hoover by Paul Letersky, FBI Special Agent with Gordon Dillo. And here is the beautiful cover of the book. And then a fascinating and long overdue look from the inner sanctum takes you inside the psyche of the man who knew all the secrets. Tom Brokaw, NBC News. So here it is. So let me start the telling you about the author, about Paul Letersky, the author of this book. Paul Letersky is a former FBI agent whose early service included 2 years working directly for FBI Director J. Edgar Hoover as a personal assistant. Letersky would go on to become a special agent and participate in events that grabbed national headlines. After leaving the FBI, he became vice president of Pan American World Airways. Letersky lives in Oregon. Paul Letersky moved to the beautiful Oregon coast in 2018. It is a magical place that allows for reflection of my career, life, and lessons learned. I have gained more than half a century of experience through the FBI and as a corporate executive in Fortune 500 companies. I became an asterisk in American history, being involved in events that grabbed national headlines as detailed in this book. He grew up in Dunkirk, New York, 50 miles from Buffalo on the edge of Lake Erie. Living in a polished neighborhood, all his relatives were within walking distance from each other. He went to a Catholic school and credit the nuns for his spelling and grammar skills. In school, he played every sport there was: football, baseball, soccer, basketball, etc. He dreamed of a professional baseball career but soon decided college would be a better path. When he graduated from sunny Fredonia with a teaching degree, he was recruited by the FBI and started work there while he went to law school at night. He received his law degree from Mount Vernon School of Law, and after working 2 years in Mr. Hoover's office, he became a special agent starting at the Cincinnati, Ohio field office. A few years later, while working out of the Alexandria, Virginia office, he was offered a job with United Airlines in their law department, heading up the team investigating civil and criminal actions directed at the airlines, including looking for the Unabomber who sent up bomb to the president of the company. He then became a vice president of Pan American World Airways in charge of five global divisions. Later, when he was president of Astrophysics Research Company, he collaborated with KGB officials during the collapse of the Soviet Union to help bring Aeroflot into compliance with international aviation security standards. He has authored syllabi and taught at the US Department of State FAA and the University of New Haven School of Public Safety and Professional Studies, and is currently on the faculty of Tillamook Bay Community College in Tillamook, Oregon as an adjunct professor and coordinator of their criminal justice program. He lives near the ocean with his life partner Shay and their big black dog. About Gordon, Dillow has been a reporter, columnist, and war correspondent for more than 30 years. He has written for a number of newspapers, including the Wall Street Journal and Los Angeles Times, and is the author or co author of numerous books. He lives in Scottsdale, Arizona. And now, friends, I will go on a break and will be back soon.
Would you love exposure for your business, product, or service to over 300 million potential listeners? Send an email to info@talkformedia.com. And now let's hear from some of our sponsors.
A monstrous infection is spreading worldwide. Oh my God, is this a simple infection or a deliberate attempt to ruin the human population? Or maybe it's bioterrorism. What is this global infection and who is spreading it? Help us find out. Go to Amazon and search for the outbreak of a monstrous infection. The human race needs your help to make this go viral. Go to Amazon.com and read The Outbreak of a Monstrous Infection to find out what happens next. Go now. The world is depending on you.
The Outbreak of a Monstrous Infection, Chapter 1, 1964 to 2018, and this is the sample track, and it is read by Dr.Afshan Hashmi. In a sprawling bungalow in Potomac, Maryland, USA, lived Dr. Honey Singh, a board-certified internal medicine and family practice physician, along with his beautiful wife, Baby Singh. Baby Singh was a fashionista and was funding women's causes through her Honey Bay Foundation. She had a ladies' book club by the name of Baby's Glam and Glitzy Club, which had many glam and glitzy ladies who were professionals living in Washington, D.C., Potomac, Maryland, Virginia, and even Beverly Hills, California, as well as elites from all of America meeting at her place on the last Wednesday of every month discussing various aspects of charities they wanted her and Dr. Honey to fund. In this club, there was a wide spectrum of career women. There were doctors, lawyers, actresses, business owners, and models, to name a few. In these book club meetings, members would come prepared after reading a book of a famous woman author, and that author was even invited from any part of the world to give her presentation, followed by a Q&A in this prestigious and elite gathering.
And now, back to Dr. Afshan Hashmi's radio show.
About the book, the first book ever written about FBI Director J. Edgar Hoover by a member of his personal staff, his former assistant Paul Letersky, offers unprecedented, clear-eyed, and compelling Mark Olshaker, co-author of Mindhunter, insight into an American legend. The 1960s and 1970s were arguably among America's most turbulent post Civil War decades. While the Vietnam War continued seemingly without end, protests and riots ravaged most cities, the Kennedys and MLK were assassinated, and corruption found its way to the highest level of politics, culminating in Watergate. In 1965, at the beginning of the chaos, 22-year-old Paul Letersky was assigned to assist the legendary FBI Director J. Edgar Hoover, who had just turned 70 and had by then led the Bureau for an incredible 41 years. Hoover was a rare and complex man who walked confidently among the most powerful. His personal privacy was more tightly guarded than the secret files he carefully collected and that were so feared by politicians and celebrities. Through Letesky's close working relationship with Hoover and the trust and confidence he gained from Hoover's most loyal senior assistant, Helen Gandy, Paul became one of the few able to enter the director's secretive and sometimes perilous world. Since Hoover's death half a century ago, millions of words have been written about the man and hundreds of hours of TV dramas and A-list Hollywood films produced. But until now, there has been virtually no account from someone who, for a period of years, spent hours with the director on a daily basis. Balanced, honest, and keenly observed this vivid foibles and all portrait of the fabled scourge of gangsters, clansmen, and communists. The Wall Street Journal sheds new light on one of the most powerful law enforcement figures in American history. And now I will read some editorial review. There has never been an account quite like the director Letesky's has mined his experience to draw a vivid foibles and all portrait of the fabled scourge of gangsters, clansmen, and communists. Wall Street Journal recounts Latesky's years in the FBI's innermost circle, a fly on the wall portrait of interest to students of crime and rumor. Critics reviews a fascinating long an overdue look from the inner sanctum at J. Edgar Hoover's decade spanning dictatorial grip on the FBI. Paul Letersky takes you deep inside the psyche of the man who knew all the secrets and played them like a card shark with a fistful of aces, however, imposed his will while protecting his own mysterious inner life. Tom Brokaw, special correspondent for NBC News and best-selling author of The Greatest Generation. There have been plenty of books about J. Edgar Hoover, but this one brings new meaning to the term. The devil is in the details. Letesky is a fine writer and storyteller, and he told me things I never knew about the man. Love him or hate him, who was a major figure in American history. Bob Schieffer, CBS News. Fascinating and engaging, Letesky brings to life a bygone era of G-men, galots, and malls, and delightfully Hoover's motherly gatekeeper, Miss Gandy, who plays Moneypenny to the author's bond. Chris Ripple, New York Times best-selling author of The Gatekeepers and The Spy Masters. I have been writing about the FBI for a quarter century, and as a kid, I even trick or treated at J. Edgar Hoover's house. Even so, I discovered in former special agent Paul Letersky, the director, new and fascinating inside, neither a pie nor a hatchet job. This clear eyed and compelling account of the author's years with the director, followed by his adventures as a street agent, is a welcome contribution to the history of law enforcement and the culture of its most famous agency. Mark Olshaker, co-author of Mindhunter, The Killer Across the Table and The Killer's Shadow. I entered the FBI under Mr. Hoover, who turned out to be the best director I served under in my 27 years at the Brio. This book is an honest and accurate portrayal of Hoover's personality and acts of kindness, as well as the control he had over not just the FBI but politicians. A must read. Joe Pistone, Akka Donnie Brasco, former FBI special agent. Folsky and fascinating, Letersky had unusual personal access to Hoover, and he documents many of his boss' first instincts and rigid eccentricities, but also debunks some of the pointless and nasty rumors. Sanford J. Unger, former director of Voice of America and host of All Things Considered, and author of FBI and Uncensored Look Behind the Walls. For a span of decades, that defined belief J. Edgar Hoover wielded more power than any other lawman in American history. Paul Letersky's rich eyewitness stories of a super cop who could be both steel-fisted and strangely soft make this by far the most illuminating portrait of Hoover I have read. Don Brown, former prosecutor and best-selling author of Travesty of Justice. Though I worked for the FBI for a quarter century, I found many of the things Letersky talks about the director shockingly new simply because no one dared speak them until now. The book rounds out what we knew about J. Edgar Hoover. Yes, he was demanding, odd at times, secretive and vindictive, but he was far more complex than more people imagine. Only could a person working by his side who answered his phone and read his email and dealt with his fits of puke and burst of enthusiasm give us this insight. Joy Navarro, former special agent and the author of 3 Minutes to Doomsday. Letersky draws back the curtain of history to offer a rare cinematic glimpse into the psychology and motivation of the Brio's first director, J. Edgar Hoover, a must read for anyone interested in the most celebrated of American law enforcement agencies. Robert K. Whitman, founder of the FBI Art Crime Team and New York Times best-selling author of Priceless and the Devil's Diary. Anyone interested in American history will find fascinating what the book reveals about the director and his agents as a former member of special operations who learned to make maximum use of intel. I found entertaining what Letersky shows about the power of secrets. Tom Setterly, author of All Secure and also retired Delta Force operator whose life was portrayed in Black Hawk Down. And now, friends, when I come back, I will read little bit of the book and then I will review the book.
Would you love exposure for your business, product, or service to over 300 million potential listeners? Send an email to info@talk4media.com. And now let's hear from some of our sponsors.
Chapter 2: How Jugaad leads to multi-sector success stories in India, including definitions of the Jugaad management principle business model. Of the book, The Modern Mughal Mentality, New Strategies to Succeed in India and the Global Marketplace. Inspiration. True Jugaad is an inspiration on how to create products using technology that meet the price-value equation. According to a Harvard Business Review article featuring expert Prahlad and Olshaker, most innovation programs are built on the assumptions of affluence and abundance. We see the rich and the young in both the developed and the developing countries demanding environmental friendly products and services. They also believe that affordability and sustainability are crucial to driving successful business today. New technologies and radical business models are important not only to penetrate mass markets in India but in the entire world. By reconfiguring all areas of the business structure, they will pull.
A monstrous infection is spreading worldwide. OMG, is this a simple infection or a deliberate attempt to ruin the human population? Or maybe it's bioterrorism. What is this global infection and who is spreading it?
Help us find out. Go to Amazon and search for The Outbreak of a Monstrous Infection. The human race needs your help to make this go viral. Go to Amazon.com and read The Outbreak of a Monstrous Infection to find out what happens next. Go now! The world is depending on you.
And now, back to Dr. Afshan Hashmi's radio show.
So now, friends, I will be reading little bit from the book and then give my thoughts in the review of the book. So this is the prologue and of the book, and it says, so I will read little bit from prologue. In a city of weak men, no one cried at his funeral. More than 1200 invited guests crowded into the National Presbyterian Church in Washington, D.C. to officially bid farewell to the man whose body now rested in the flag draped coffin near the pulpit. President Richard Nixon, sitting in the front row with the First Lady, was trying his best to look appropriately solemn, even though he was privately delighted that the man in the coffin was finally dead. Nixon's long faced, lugubrious looking Vice President, Spiro Agnew, was in second row with his wife, while nearby sat Supreme Court Justices Warren Burger and Byron White, along with House of Representatives Minority Leader and future unelected President Gerald Ford. Former U.S. Attorney General John Mitchell, now heading Nixon's re-election campaign, was there as well, while other pews were packed with cabinet secretaries, high-level presidential advisors, foreign ambassadors, big city mayors, and police chiefs, dozens of senators and congressmen, even a movie and TV star, all there to pay tribute to the strange and remarkable man in the flag draped coffin. And from where I sat in a section of the church reserved for the dead man's exceedingly small group of friends and distant relatives, I couldn't see a damp eye in the house. To anyone unfamiliar with American history, it might have seemed odd that the man in the coffin would rate such a turnout of the famous and powerful, or that his funeral was being broadcast live on three television networks. This at a time when there were only three television networks to choose from. The dead man was, after all, just a bureaucrat, the head of a relatively small government agency, a man whose position in the federal table of organization technically put him on an equal footing with the Deputy Secretary of Agriculture or the head of the Federal Highway Administration. So this was little bit from the prologue, and now I will read from some of the chapters. So this is chapter 1, and it says, Mr. Hoover's FBI. August 1965, a stiffingly hot and sultry Monday morning in Washington, D.C. Hot and sultry is the only kind of morning they have in Washington, D.C. in August. I was standing at the corner of Pennsylvania Avenue and Ninth Street, just outside the ornate Art Deco double doors of the enormous U.S. Department of Justice building, already sweating in my off the rack grey suit and white shirt and tie. In just a few moments, I had walked through those doors and report as ordered to begin my life in J. Edgar Hoover's FBI. I couldn't help thinking once again about the odd circumstances that had brought me here. It's funny how the course of your life can shift on mere chance. So this was from chapter 1, and now I will read little bit from chapter 2, and it says, the director. I faced the tigress first. Despite what I had been told by my section chief, she was hardly an example of the formidable female of the species Panthera tigris. Why, you must be Mr. Letersky, Miss Gandy said, beaming a smile. Welcome to the director's staff. We have heard such good things about you, she chuckled, and I suppose you have heard more than a few things about us. Thank you, Miss Gandy. It's a pleasure to be here. Naturally, I ignored the part about things I might have heard about the director's office staff. Helen Gandy was 69 years old at the time, although she looked younger. A short, distinguished looking woman, she wore a grey button to the neck dress. Her silver hair was curled and permed in a style that had been popular in the 1950s. Although she had been born and raised in New Jersey, 50 years in Washington had left her with the soft, slightly southern accent of a native born Washingtonian. I later found out she was a GS 17 level employee, the highest ranking, and at 36,000 annually in her later years, the highest paid female in the entire 40,000 employee Justice Department. Are you nervous? She asked. No, I lied. Despite my brave thoughts, when my section chief told me about my new assignment over the weekend, I had a chance to think about it, and I was nervous as hell. The night before, I had practiced my responses to questions the director might ask me, and this morning I had been careful to bring a clean extra handkerchief with me in case I got an attack of sweaty palms. One of the many, many stories I didn't admit I had heard was about the director's aversion to sweaty handshakes. It was said that many an FBI career had been derailed by a clammy mitt. I was not by nature a sweaty palm kind of guy, but still. So, this is chapter 3 now. Nightmares in the Daytime, Thursday evening, just after 7 p.m. Washington time, April 4, 1968. It was one of those nights that started off as normal and routine, and then for the rest of your life, you remember in precise and exacting detail where you were when you heard about it. So, this was little bit. Reading from the book, and now I will do my review of the book, and it goes like this. I first came across this book while browsing the shelves of Barnes and Noble. I have always loved spy stories, but first I expected it to be a little dry. It turns out that Letersky is an excellent writer and the book was captivating. Letersky's stories and observation about J. Edgar Hoover were fascinating, but it was his friendship with Miss Gandy that brought the heart to the story. Hoover is a controversial figure, but Letersky provides a balanced and contextualized look at him. I really enjoyed the insight into this slice of history. I enjoyed the book thoroughly and give it 5 out of 5 stars. So I would highly recommend this book. So if you get a chance, do read this book. And these were all my personal uh, like personal thoughts, and this is not a sponsored like review or anything, and even if it would have been a sponsored review, my thoughts would not have changed because I give a very fair and balanced review, and I have reviewed thousands of books. So if you want to get your book reviewed on this show and you want me to do that, then please do write to me at Afshan at drafshanhashmi.com, and I will give you a very honest review and a balanced review, what the book requires it and what my personal thoughts are. Having said that, friends, now I will ask Jason, my sound engineer, to play the last commercial of the show, and then I will sign off from this show here. And now I'm going to sign off, and cheers and bye bye, and see you next Thursday at next Wednesday at 7 p.m. US Eastern Time on W4WN Radio and Talk4 TV. And Thursdays I come at 6 p.m. US Eastern Time on K4HD, which is Hollywood Radio and Talk4 TV. Cheers and bye bye. And listen.
You have been listening to Dr. Afshan Hashmi's radio show on W4WN Radio, the Women for Women Network. Tune in live right here every Wednesday at 6 p.m. Eastern Time. Would you love exposure for your business, product, or service to over 300 million potential listeners? Send an email at info@talk4media.com. And remember, if you missed any part of this show or want to hear it again, find our featured show on iHeartRadio, where all past episodes are available on demand 24/7. See you next Wednesday at 6 p.m. Eastern Time.